After 3 long decades at Morrison Engineering, I was handed a retirement package worth $3.2 million. I picked up my briefcase, tucked my company award plaque under my arm, and headed out the door 2 hours earlier than usual because I wanted to catch my wife off guard with the news. The second I stepped inside our front door, I heard Linda's voice drifting down from upstairs. She was on the phone, sounding calm and confident as she said, "Do not worry. Once the divorce is finalized, we will walk away with at least half of it. Maybe even more if his attorney does not know what he is doing." I stopped dead at the base of our oak staircase. That staircase had been part of our life for nearly 3 decades. We took Christmas pictures there for 28 straight years. It was also the very spot where I carried her across the threshold when we bought the house back in 1997. My name is Robert Mitchell. I am 62 years old. And earlier that same morning, I had received what I honestly believed was the retirement package of my dreams. 30 years of 12-hour workdays, weekend assignments, family dinners I missed because I was stuck at the office. All of it led up to that one moment. My boss, Frank, shook my hand with tears in his eyes and told me I had earned every single dollar. The company threw a celebration in my honor. My coworkers presented me with a gold watch. I drove home with the signed paperwork resting on the passenger seat, picturing the look on Linda's face when I told her we were finally, truly set for the rest of our lives. But instead of sharing good news, I found myself standing in my own foyer, listening to my wife casually discuss how to tear me apart financially. I did not march upstairs. I did not call her name. I quietly placed my briefcase on the floor, turned around, walked back outside, and got in my car. I drove about 3 miles to a small coffee shop down the road. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly grip my phone. For the next hour, I just sat there, staring into space and replaying our entire marriage in my mind. I asked myself if I had missed warning signs. The truth was, they had been there. Over the past year, Linda had grown distant. She started going to the gym 5 days a week. She bought new outfits. She changed her hairstyle. For the first time in our marriage, she locked her phone with a password. When I asked her about it, she laughed and said, "Robert, everyone uses passwords now. Do not be so old-fashioned." And I believed her. I believed her because I trusted her. I had spent 30 years building a life with that woman. But sitting there in that coffee shop, something important hit me. Linda did not know about the retirement package. The official notice was not even scheduled to reach my company email until the next day. There was no way she could have known about the $3.2 million, which meant she had already been planning the divorce. She must have assumed I would receive my standard pension. The $3.2 million was a surprise, something she had just learned about from somewhere else. I pulled out my phone and called my colleague Dave. "Dave," I said, doing my best to keep my voice steady, "I need to ask you something. Who can see employee retirement packages before they are officially announced?" There was a short silence. Then he said, "Just human resources and the executive team." "Why?" "Can you check whether anyone looked at my file in the last 24 hours? Another pause. "Rob, I could get into serious trouble for that." "Dave, please," I told him. "This is important." About 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. "Your file was opened yesterday at 2:15 in the afternoon by Margaret Shun in Human Resources," he said. Then he hesitated. "But there is more. The file was forwarded to an outside email address." "Can you see where it was sent?" "Yes," he replied. "It went to David Thompson at thompsonfinancial.com. David Thompson Financial Consulting." Right there in the coffee shop, I searched for the company online. A professional-looking website came up, featuring a well-dressed man in his early 40s. He was good-looking, in great shape, smiling confidently at the camera. His services included retirement planning, divorce financial strategy, investment advising, and asset protection. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath through my nose. So that was the man she had been talking to. Not just some ordinary financial advisor, but someone who specialized in divorce. And on top of that, someone inside my own company, Margaret Shun, had illegally sent him my private information. Margaret Shun. I knew her. She had been working at Morrison Engineering for 5 years. I cannot say she was ever especially warm with Linda, but truth be told, I never paid close attention. I was always tied up with work, chasing deadlines and putting out fires, so little social details slipped past me. About 3 hours later, I pulled into the driveway and walked inside. Linda stood in the kitchen cooking dinner like it was any other evening. She smiled and mentioned I was home late, then asked how my day had gone. I paused and really looked at her. This was the woman I had loved for 28 years, the mother of my children, the center of the life I had built as a grown man. I told her my day was fine and said I had just wrapped up a few final projects. I kept the rest to myself. I did not mention the retirement package. I did not mention anything at all. I went upstairs, changed clothes, and joined her for dinner. We ate lasagna. We watched television. We went to bed. Through all of it, one thought kept pounding in my head. I needed a plan. The next morning, I woke at 6 o'clock. Linda was still asleep. I got dressed and drove to a law office in the next town, about 30 miles away, so nobody would recognize me. The attorney was Patricia Morrison, no connection to my former employer. I had found her online. She handled high-asset divorces. Patricia looked to be in her mid-50s, sharp eyes, sharp suit. I laid everything out for her. The retirement package, the phone call I overheard, the electronic mail from Human Resources. She leaned back and spoke plainly. My wife, she said, was likely preparing to divorce me and claim half of my retirement money, maybe more if she argued she had supported my career. After 28 years of marriage, that argument would probably stick. Then she listed our advantages. First, Linda did not know I was aware. Second, the Human Resources employee who sent me that information had broken federal privacy law. Third, if we proved Linda was involved with the financial advisor, that counted as adultery, and Virginia still considered that in divorce court. Fourth, the funds had not yet been transferred. Company policy required 30 days before the money moved. I asked what I should do. She smiled, the kind of smile that comes from winning cases. She told me to act normal, gather evidence quietly, and in 30 days we would shield the retirement package from her reach. I left with instructions. Document everything. Record conversations where legal. Hire a private investigator. Do not move money. Do not change passwords. Do not tip her off. For the next week, I played the unaware husband. I attended farewell lunches. I cleared out my office and brought home plants and engineering awards. Linda helped set up a home workspace. She was affectionate, asking about retirement plans. One night over wine, she suggested we finally travel to Italy and see Rome, something I had always wanted. I said it sounded great and that we should plan it. She squeezed my hand and said she was proud of my 30 years of hard work. I told her we had built this life together. The words felt hollow. Meanwhile, I hired a private investigator named Marcus Shaw, a former police detective in his late 50s. Professional. Quiet. I gave him David Thompson's details and Linda's schedule and told him to spend what he needed. 4 days later, he called and asked me to come in. On his desk sat a folder filled with photographs. Linda and David Thompson at a restaurant in Richmond, 40 miles from our house. Linda and David Thompson entering a hotel. Dates and timestamps showed the affair had lasted 7 months. Marcus had also researched Thompson. He specialized in helping wives increase divorce settlements. His website advertised pre-divorce asset analysis, which really meant finding ways to extract maximum value before filing. In 3 years, he had worked on 12 divorces. In 10, his female clients received far more than half. He used tactics like hiding assets and timing filings. In 2 cases, there was evidence he coached wives to create paper trails suggesting financial control or abuse. Marcus said Thompson was smart, careful, and greedy. He took a percentage of the settlement. I stared at the photographs of Linda smiling at him, and I felt something inside me shut down. I saw photographs of Linda kissing that man in a hotel parking lot. In another shot, her hand rested on his arm like she belonged there. I told Marcus I wanted everything, every meeting, every message, every scrap of proof. He said he was already working on it and would dig up whatever could be found. When I got home, Linda was cooking my favorite pot roast, like she always did when she wanted to be sweet. She asked how my day had gone. I told her I had been out playing golf. She believed me without hesitation. Why would she not? In 28 years of marriage, I had never once lied to her. That night, I lay beside her in bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark. Part of me wanted to roll over and confront her right then, to demand the truth and let the anger out. But I kept hearing Patricia's steady voice in my head, reminding me not to reveal what I knew, to stay quiet, collect proof, and protect myself. So I kept still and waited. 2 weeks after I retired, the official announcement was released. I was sitting in my home office when Linda rushed in holding her phone. She said she had just seen on Facebook that Morrison had given me a retirement package, and she asked how much it was. I had rehearsed this moment. Patricia had prepared me carefully. I told Linda it was complicated, that it involved restructuring a pension, part immediate payout and part annuity, and that the company was still finalizing the exact figures. She pressed me for an estimate. I shrugged and said that after taxes and setting up the annuity, it would probably be around $800,000 up front, with the remainder paid out over 20 years. Her expression shifted just slightly. She had clearly expected the full $3,200,000 all at once. She said it was still wonderful and that we could do a lot with $800,000. I agreed, but added that most of it should probably stay invested for our real retirement needs. She nodded, but I could see her thinking hard, adjusting whatever plans she had already made. That night, she made another phone call. Following Patricia's advice and under Virginia's one-party consent law, I had placed a recording device in our bedroom. Linda went into the bathroom, turned on the water, and began speaking. She said the amount was lower than they thought, that I claimed only $800,000 was immediate and the rest was structured payments. She said they could not delay much longer because she would be 60 next year and needed to file soon. She mentioned timing concerns, then agreed to meet on Thursday. The next morning, I played the recording for Patricia. She listened closely and said it clearly showed intent and planning. She then laid out the next steps. The retirement funds would be transferred in 12 days. As soon as the money hit my account, we would move it into a protected trust that she would establish that week. It was legal, solid, and designed specifically for retirement assets in Virginia. Then she said we would file for divorce first. I was surprised and asked if I would really be the one filing. She said absolutely. In Virginia, the first person to file gains advantages. That person selects jurisdiction, frames the narrative, and, with our evidence of adultery and financial plotting, holds the upper hand. Linda would be left scrambling. I asked about the house, our savings, and everything else. Patricia pulled out a spreadsheet. The house was worth about $900,000. We had $200,000 in joint savings. My 401k held $400,000. Linda's 401k had around $80,000. Both cars were paid off, and we had additional investments. In a typical Virginia divorce, she said, Linda would receive roughly half of the marital property. But this was not typical. There was adultery. There was evidence of coordination with her lover. There were signs she planned to manipulate finances. Patricia intended to argue for a 60-40 split in my favor, and she believed we could win that. As for the retirement package, she explained it could be treated as separate property if structured correctly, since it compensated me for my individual labor. The trust would shield it. Linda could contest it, but with adultery in play, her leverage would be limited. I leaned back and asked when we would file. Patricia said the day after the funds cleared. The trust would be ready, the documents drafted, and the evidence organized. She said it would strike like a freight train. For the next 12 days, I acted perfectly normal. Linda and I talked about travel plans for retirement. We even discussed possibly downsizing the house someday. She showed me brochures for senior communities. All the while, she was preparing to leave me, and I was quietly protecting the life I had spent 30 years building. Marcus kept watching. He documented 3 additional meetings between Linda and David Thompson. He also uncovered records showing Thompson had advised Linda to start writing down examples of so-called financial control. There were notes suggesting I handled all the money and kept her uninformed. That was not true. She had full access to every account. She simply never cared to manage them. Still, Thompson was coaching her to construct a story of financial abuse. It made my blood boil. On the 12th day, the retirement funds arrived at Morrison Federal Credit Union. $3,200,000 appeared on my phone screen at 9:15 in the morning. By 10:30, Patricia had transferred the entire amount into the Robert Mitchell Retirement Trust. By 11 o'clock, it was locked down under Virginia law. At 2 that afternoon, Linda was served with divorce papers at our home. I was not there. On Patricia's advice, I stayed at a hotel. One of Marcus's associates delivered the documents and recorded Linda's reaction. She was stunned, completely blindsided. She first called David Thompson. Then she contacted an attorney. By 5 o'clock, her lawyer had reached out to Patricia. Later, Patricia played me the voicemail. The lawyer sounded confused and irritated. They wanted details about the retirement funds. They wanted to negotiate. The next morning, I sat in Patricia's office while she returned the call on speaker. She calmly stated that her client was open to discussing settlement. Then she added that we possessed extensive documentation of Mrs. Mitchell's adultery with Mr. Thompson. Patricia stated clearly that we had proof of Linda's involvement with David Thompson. That proof included photographs, hotel receipts, and recorded conversations where they discussed ways to increase her divorce payout by inventing claims of financial abuse. The attorney on the other end of the line said nothing. Patricia continued, steady as ever, and explained that we also had evidence showing Linda obtained confidential details about my retirement package through illegal channels. An employee from Morrison Engineering's Human Resources Department had forwarded private documents to Thompson. Patricia made it clear we were ready to pursue criminal charges against both Thompson and that employee if it came to that. Again, silence. Then Patricia calmly laid out her offer. Linda would receive 40% of the marital assets, not including my retirement package. That meant 40% of the home equity, 40% of our joint savings, her entire 401k, and one of the vehicles. My retirement funds would remain separate property inside the protected trust. In return, we would not press criminal charges and would keep the details of her affair and scheme out of public court records. The other lawyer finally said she needed to speak with her client. Patricia told her she had 48 hours, then ended the call. I asked Patricia if Linda would agree. She said Linda did not really have a choice. If the case went before a judge, Linda would likely receive nothing from the retirement package anyway, and possibly less than 40% of the remaining assets because of adultery. On top of that, she could face conspiracy charges. Patricia said the offer was generous. 46 hours later, Linda's attorney called back and accepted the settlement. The following 2 months felt like a long blur of documents, signatures, and dividing property. Linda moved out and rented an apartment. David Thompson vanished as soon as the threat of criminal exposure became real. The human resources employee, Margaret Shun, was terminated from Morrison Engineering and later faced charges for violating privacy laws. Linda and I met one last time at Patricia's office to sign the final paperwork. She looked worn down, older somehow, and she would not meet my eyes. As we were leaving, she quietly apologized. She said she knew it did not change anything, but she was sorry. I looked at her and felt like I was staring at a stranger who only looked like my wife. I asked her why. She said she felt invisible during our marriage. She said I worked too much and that David made her feel noticed and young again. She called it stupid and blamed herself. I told her that planning to ruin me financially was not stupidity. It was deliberate. Her voice broke as she admitted she knew that and would have to live with it. Then she walked away, and just like that, 28 years were behind me. The house eventually sold for $920,000. After everything was divided, I walked away with about $500,000 from the sale, my 401k, my full retirement package secured in trust, and something just as important, my self-respect. Linda took her portion and moved to Florida to live near her sister. I purchased a smaller home in the Virginia mountains. It has 3 bedrooms, a workshop, and a wide view of the valley. These days, I spend my time woodworking, hiking the trails nearby, and volunteering at a local veterans center. I reconnected with my children, both in their 20s, and explained the truth. They were hurt, but they understood. They had sensed their mother pulling away long before I did. 6 months after the divorce, my former colleague Dave from the Information Technology Department called me. He told me Margaret Shun had tried to sue Morrison Engineering for wrongful termination, but the case was dismissed. He also said David Thompson was under investigation by the State Financial Board. 2 other women had come forward with similar complaints, and Thompson had lost his license. When I hung up, I did not feel triumph. I felt a quiet sense that things had balanced out. I am 63 now. My retirement is secure. My life is peaceful. I have a second chance to live on my own terms. Some nights I still think about Linda and the years we shared. I think about what might have been. But more often, I think about how close I came to losing everything and how one overheard conversation changed the course of my future. If I could give advice to anyone facing something like this, it would be simple. Do not react out of pure emotion. Do not rush into confrontation. Do not destroy your position before you gather the facts. When betrayal involves money, you need a plan. You need proof. And you need patience. If I had stormed upstairs that day and confronted Linda, I would have lost. She would have prepared. Thompson would have erased evidence. The human resources employee would have covered her tracks. At best, I would have walked away with half my retirement, maybe less. Instead, I stayed quiet. I thought ahead. I protected what I had earned, and I came out standing. This is not the retirement I pictured when I married Linda 28 years ago, but it is mine. I earned it through 3 decades of hard work and one clear moment when I chose strategy over anger. Sometimes I sit on my porch in the mountains and watch the sun set over the valley. I remember the oak staircase in our old house, the Christmas photographs, the dreams we once shared. Then I think about the $3,200,000 resting safely in my retirement trust. I think about my workshop, the hiking trails, and the freedom I have now. I think about the future still in front of me, built on truth instead of deception. I have learned that real revenge is not loud or dramatic. It is not shouting or public scenes. Real victory is protecting yourself, securing your future, and walking away with dignity. Let the courts handle justice. Let life handle the rest. I kept my retirement. I kept my freedom. And in the end, that is the only win that truly matters.